Hello class, in this video I'll be introducing how to add and subtract matrices. Let's begin. We will start by determining when two matrices are equal. So two matrices are equal if they have the same dimension and all corresponding entries are equal. Okay, by dimension I mean the number of rows times the number of columns. We don't actually multiply those numbers together, but we're going to write it as some number times some number, where the first number is the number of rows and the second number is the number of columns. You can only add or subtract matrices that have the same dimension. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to add two matrices together to find the value of these variables in these matrices. Okay, so if we want to add these two matrices together, we need to determine if they are the same dimension. So let's start with the matrix on the left. This matrix has 2 rows and 2 columns. And notice that all matrices in this problem have 2 rows and 2 columns. So the dimension for each matrix is 2 by 2. 2 rows by 2 columns. And now that that is established, we can go ahead and add the two matrices together. So starting with the 3m, 3m corresponds to the 1 in the second matrix, which corresponds to the 7 in the third matrix. So 3m plus 1 has to equal 7. The n plus 4 corresponds with the negative 5n, which corresponds to the 5 in the third matrix. So n plus 4 plus the negative 5n is equal to 5. And now I'm going to go ahead and write out the rest of the equations. Okay, so now that all of the equations are set up, I'm going to go ahead and solve each one of these. Starting with the equation in red, we're going to subtract 1 from both sides of the equation, so that 3m is equal to 6. And if we divide both sides by 3, m is equal to 2. On to the equation in purple. N plus 4 plus a negative 5n is negative 4n plus 4, and that has to equal 5. Subtracting 4 from both sides of the equation yields the following. And it's very tempting to write n is equal to negative 4. However, that's not true. N is equal to negative 1/4. Onto the equation in green, I'm going to go ahead and add 3 to both sides. So 2r is equal to 7, so that r is equal to 7/2. Finally, the equation in blue, 4 plus 2 is 6. And subtract 2 from both sides, p is equal to 4. So there are the values for the 4 variables in the matrices. All right, example 2. We have 2 matrices that are being subtracted to give us a third matrix. And before we decide to solve this problem, let's go ahead and figure out if we can by determining the dimensions of each of the matrices here. So this matrix has 2 rows and it looks like 3 columns. And notice that every matrix in this problem has 2 rows and 3 columns. So the dimensions for each matrix is 2 by 3. And since each matrix has the same dimension, we can go ahead and subtract the 2 matrices. Okay, starting with the 2 in the top left-hand corner, that corresponds to the negative 3r, which corresponds to the negative 4. So 2 minus negative 3r is equal to negative 4. Now, please be careful here. When students subtract matrices, they're very tempted to write this. 2 minus 3r is equal to negative 4. And that is wrong because they forgot to include the subtraction symbol right there. So when you write the equations for each of the corresponding entries, please make sure that you include the subtraction symbol in the equation. Next, negative 5y corresponds to 2, which corresponds to 7. So we have the equation negative 5y minus 2 is equal to 7. And now I'm going to go ahead and write out the rest of the equations. Okay, now that we have each of the equations, let's go ahead and solve them. Starting with the equation in red, 2 minus negative 3r is 2 plus 3r. Subtracting 2 from both sides yields 3r is equal to 6, so that r is equal to 2. For the equation in pink, I'm going to add 2 to both sides, which yields the following equation. So y is equal to negative 9/5. On to the equation in purple, negative 5 is equal to 10x. And it's really tempting for students to just write x is equal to negative 2. However, that is not the case, because if you divide both sides by 10, x actually equals negative half. So be careful with problems like that. And finally, the equation in green, negative 3 plus 8 is equal to d, so d is equal to 5. And there are the values for the 4 variables in the problem.